Good morning, people of grace. On this Palm Sunday, I hope that you are well, that you are encouraged, that you are celebrating Jesus' triumphal entry even as we go through this current pandemic. There are four things that I want to share with you today that hopefully will make this Palm Sunday more meaningful for you wherever you are seeking to watch this and worship the Lord. First, I want us to keep Jesus at the foundation. What I mean by the foundation is at the foundation of kind of our hearts and our minds and our thinking and how we process things. Let's keep Jesus the Prince there, because other foundations, other princes that might hijack your inner narrative, they're going to persecute you. So let's not get built on any other foundation. To stay on the foundation of Jesus, we need to keep returning to him. The passage we're going to look at says, I returned 7 times a day. We have to keep bringing ourselves back to this foundation of Christ and processing things with that mentality. And when we do that, we can keep hope. Those are the four things. Keep Jesus at the foundation. Don't let other foundations or princes kind of cut into that. Return to Jesus as the foundation many times a day, and when you do, you can keep hope. Our passage is from Psalm 119. Last week, as part of our worship, we had a passage for meditation from Psalm 119, and that was verses 65 through 72, and that built a bridge to Hebrews chapter 5, where we looked at Jesus and the kind of fear he experienced in the face of death and asked ourselves 4 questions. What is fear? What is reverence? What did fear teach Jesus? And what can fear teach us? I want to continue to build on that theme by returning to Psalm 119 and looking at verses 160 to 168 of Psalm 119. And here it is for you. The sum of your word is truth, and every one of your righteous rules endures forever. Princes persecute me without cause, but my heart stands in awe of your words. I rejoice at your word, like one who finds great spoil. I hate and abhor falsehood, but I love your law. 7 times a day I will praise you for your righteous rules. Great peace have those who love your law. Nothing can make them stumble. Nothing can offend them. I hope for your salvation, O Lord, and I do your commandments. My soul keeps your testimonies. I love them exceedingly. I keep your precepts and testimonies, for all my ways are before you. That's Psalm 119, verses 160 through 168. And that is our passage for today. And building off of last week, the psalmist puts this statement in there, and I've quoted this verse many times. Great peace have they who love your law. Nothing can offend them. This idea of peace or shalom is the major segment of this section of Psalms. Psalm 119 is the great acrostic with each section, each 8-verse section, starting with a different letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And our first verse today, the sum of your word is truth, is like the R. And then this section is the S, emphasizing peace or shalom. And with that key verse being great peace have they who love your revelation of yourself, God. Nothing can offend them. And fear, threat, insecurity, danger, not processed well internally, that's like the opposite of peace. Shalom is well-being. No matter what is going on out here, I'm able to process it well. And how we process that fear, that threat, that insecurity, that pretty much determines how mature we're going to be as we go through this, how healthy we're going to be, how much we're going to be people of shalom. How we process fear, how we process the things that trigger us, not the things that trigger us. How we process the things that trigger us tells us where we're going to land in our life. The point is not that person triggered me. He's a bully. I hate bullies. That's not the point. Satan is the ultimate bully. And God actually wants us to not be able to even be triggered by Satan. He wants us to have this kind of great peace. So really, the challenge is, how can I not be triggered? How can I at least get glimpses of not even letting something like the COVID-19 pandemic trigger me? See, our hearts, our inner state, our emotions are not merely handed to us. We have allowed ourselves to come into this very passive place where if I have an emotional reaction to something, that just happens to me. And that's not even actually true. I don't want to get off on that tangent because that would get pretty technical. But our emotions and our hearts are not merely handed to us. We feel, and therefore then think, about the ways that we feel and think because of our context and our experiences. Physiologically, fear is unavoidable. We talked about that last week. But how do I become, if even just for brief moments, unthreatenable? How do I gain shalom? Fear not processed well is at the heart of almost everything that stumbles us. And Psalm 119, this section of that great acrostic, that celebration that God does reveal himself to people and that we can communicate that revelation through language. That's like the big point of Psalm 119. This psalm has this incredible verse in it of getting to this place where you can't be stumbled because you have shalom, you have great peace. And I want to go back to the R in that acrostic, and then we get to the S. So there's R for your sign language, and then S. The R, the last verse of that R number 8 in these 8 verse sections. The sum of your word is truth. Sum here is pulling it all together. Each and every part, the head, how we knit things together. In the New Testament, Christ is the head from which all things consist, from which all things flow together. And this foundational truth that Christ is the head, if we can experience that truth, that sets us free. That's what Jesus said. If you know the truth, if you experience the truth, it will set you free. Jesus is the truth. And so I put out this slide last night on Facebook, and it says, on particularly rough days, when I'm sure I can't possibly endure, I like to remind myself that my track record for getting through bad days so far is 100%. And that's pretty good. My track record is 100% of getting through bad times and bad days. That's pretty good. That slide's from Blower Tactical Systems. I mentioned them in last week's sermon. But that slide means every bad day, every bad experience I've had, I've gotten through. Now we know there will come a day that I will not get through. My journey will end. And COVID-19 hasn't changed that. So how are you filtering this? Who are you making the sum or the head of your thoughts? Or what are you making the sum or the head of your thoughts? Make this Palm Sunday a triumphal entry for Jesus. Even in the middle of this COVID-19 pandemic, a triumphal entry into your heart, into your mind, into your inner being. He is that Prince of Peace. Great peace have they who love him and walk in that. Nothing can stumble them. That's not the narrative you're going to get fed today. I was just between checking something online and then watching Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy with my family. I saw first online and then 2 straight commercials from news sources about the COVID-19. The first one that I saw online was, the U.S. leads the world in coronavirus cases. I'll come back to that one in a minute. The next one I saw, which was on TV, does the coronavirus make us more vulnerable to domestic terrorism? Wow. And then the third one, right after this, will coronavirus cause your health insurance costs to skyrocket? Think about those three news feeds. The first one makes a claim. The U.S. leads the world in coronavirus cases. Okay, of those nations that are honestly reporting it, the U.S. does appear to have the most number of cases. But that's such a misleading statistic, because the U.S. is also by far the largest nation where we can trust their reporting. I'm not trying to make a political point here. I'm saying, look at what our hearts grab. Of the 22 countries that are fairly open and we can trust their reporting, that are experiencing something significant of this pandemic, 15 or more deaths per million people. Of those 22 countries, the United States ranks 19th as of this morning. I'm not saying that to brag or celebrate, it's horrible. I'm saying that isn't how we're feeling. That out of these 22 countries that have 15 or more deaths per million people, where we can trust their reporting, the US, as of this morning, is 19th. Is that how you feel? It's horrible. It's a pandemic. People are dying. But how are you processing the data? What is your heart grabbing onto? And then the other two, are we more vulnerable to domestic terrorism? Are our health insurance rates going to go up? Those are just future speculations that may have some truth to them, but they're headline grabbing. They're appealing to our fear and our sense of vulnerability to get us to watch, to control us, to direct our narrative. This is not Jesus' life for us. That's not what he wants. He is the one who is the sum of all truth. And when we connect with him, we can experience great peace. And that transitions into this section where the author says, "Princes persecute me without cause, but my heart stands in awe of your word." That phrase, "princes persecute me," that's the first S in this acrostic. Princes here is related to the sum above. Sum there is like the idea of the head, and this idea of prince is like the head. Lots of things can like jump into your heart and grab your narrative when you feel threatened. And those things become your sum, they become your head, they drive your inner life. But those things are false princes. And the ultimate false princes or lying princes are principalities and powers. We looked last week at how the devil uses fear to keep us enslaved. Jesus is the prince, he's the sum, he's the head, who doesn't persecute us, who doesn't cause us to ruminate, who doesn't drive this negative narrative. If you are caught up in a negative narrative, a discouraging negative, a discouraging narrative, a depressing narrative, it's not because of the information. We're in a pandemic, the information is bad. It's because of what you're allowing to rule your inner life. That's a hard truth, but it's a truth that we all need to process. And we need to be looking a little more discerningly, warily at all this information that's hitting us and saying, is that even really an accurate reflection of what's going on? And what's it appealing to anyway? What's that revealing about my inner narrative that I grab onto that piece? That may not really be a statistically sound way of looking at it, or maybe speculative and future oriented and just taking me into this very dark place. Don't let that happen. These princes that will grab us ultimately are principalities and powers. We know that from the New Testament. In the book of Revelation and Matthew 24, and I'm not going to tie Revelation 6 and Matthew 24 together today, we don't have time for that, talks about how this age will be full of these false princes, these antichrists that will stand in the place of Christ. And out of that will flow wars and rumors of wars, financial inflation and hardship, and scarcity and famine and pestilence and plague. Well, COVID-19 brings all of those things to the forefront. And these are like princes, 4 horsemen of the apocalypse that can grab your mind and control you. Christians can't let that happen. We know who's on the throne. He should be our prince, the sum of our thinking, because he actually is the sum of all things. And so instead of getting hung up on all these princes that will hijack your thinking, cause you to live in fear, and therefore persecute you, these thoughts and feelings will hunt you down. And sometimes it breaks out where literally, physically, you're getting hunted in the world. But the psalmist is saying, I'm not going to let that happen. I stand in awe at your name. So that is the challenge, because Jesus said, peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you, not as the world gives to you, I give to you. And so that leads to the second one, which is rejoice. Therefore I rejoice. Princes may persecute me, but I stand in awe of your words. I rejoice at your word, like one who finds great spoil, the pearl of great price, this wonderful treasure. I found it. So I need to grab this, and I need to embed it deep in my soul and rejoice. This idea of rejoicing is like Mary's song in Luke chapter 1, verse 47, the Magnificat, where she says, I rejoice in God, my Savior. It's the same idea that's used when Christ returns in Revelation 19:7. In heaven, and all the saints rejoice and say, hallelujah. I rejoice at this treasure I have found, the Word of God. And I make that my prince, the starting point of my thoughts and feelings. And anything that takes me away from that, that's something I need to hate. I hate falsehood. So princes may persecute me, but I rejoice because I stand in awe of your word. And since I stand in awe of your word, what I hate is when these falsehoods, these false princes, grab my narrative. They make me feel threatened. I have all these feelings about that. Then my mind starts rolling. I'm analyzing things. We're always doing things at these three levels of awareness. We're just often not aware that we are. We're just stuck up here. There's a lot else going on. And the psalmist says, I hate falsehood. I hate things that take me away from truth. You can't just look at truth as data. That's a great downfall of our age, where we have a never-ending stream of information and we've mistaken that as wisdom. It's not wisdom. Wisdom is what you do with it. And you're not even going to interpret it well unless you're starting from that place of Christ as the head. And anything that takes you away from starting there is a falsehood. It's a false prince. And so you got to hate that. And all of us get distracted. So he moves to the fourth kind of S, which is 7 times a day. S in the Hebrew, not necessarily in the English, though in this case it is. He says, 7 times a day I praise you because of your righteous judgments, your decision making, your mind, your mentality. 7 times a day I return to that. And that's what we have to do. If we want to have this kind of great peace that's coming up, we just need to realize that we get taken off of that foundation of Christ, and we just have to keep returning to it day in and day out, day in and day out. I get taken this way, come back. I get taken this way, come back. 7 times a day, I return to you. And that gives me this great peace, have they who love your law. Nothing can offend them. Nothing can make them stumble. This is not talking about whether there are offenses or stumbling blocks. There will always be offenses and stumbling blocks. COVID-19 is a stumbling block. It's an offense. It won't be in the New Jerusalem, but it's here now, and it can trip us up. But if I'm processing it well, I have great peace, great shalom, and nothing can make me stumble. I alluded to this a minute ago, but the short, bottom line, hard reality is this. If you stumble, as an adult, I'm not talking about children. Children are different. They don't have an adult mind. But as an adult, if you stumble, you have been knocked off the sum of all truth, the ground of being. You cannot process life well from a stumbled or an offended place. You cannot do it. I cannot do it. Nobody can do it. It's a hard truth, but as your pastor, I must tell you today that your emotions do not just happen to you. Your emotions are in part, one part, of the system you have built to interact with this world. I know we don't like to admit that. It is true. And my emotions are part of the system I have built to deal with this world. When I play the stoic, though I might be a stoic, some of my personality, if I'm brutally honest, some of that's also how I make myself feel safe in this world. And the stoic personality is really, really good if someone literally pulls a knife or a gun on you. It's not really the way to process everything. Um, but I made choices that would cause me to be prone to that. And where it's good, fine. Where it's not good, I need to be able to own that. And that's a promise from God, because what I have in part built, my emotional way of processing this world, by God's grace, I can change. I can get to this place of great peace and great shalom. And when I do, then you get to that next point, which is my soul hopes for your salvation. My soul hopes for your salvation. You're Yeshua, you're Jesus. This is the word Yeshua, where we get the word Joshua, or Jesus. When I have great peace, I have hope for your salvation. And then my soul does two things. It really guards, this is the seventh S, your testimonies. And it keeps your precepts. Testimonies, the word of your testimony. Did not love their lives so much as to shrink from death. And your precepts, your words, your decisions, your judgments, all my ways, my gut, my sense of threat, my emotions, how that makes me feel, my thinking, all my ways are before you. Wouldn't it be better to operate from that place of great peace and just guard the testimony and guard God's precepts? So let me come back to the four things I said at the beginning. What does all this mean? Let me boil it down for you. When we keep Jesus as our foundation, our truth, our amen, that's this idea of truth in verse 160. When we do that, false princes can't wedge into that foremost place in our being. False princes, false information, false thoughts and feelings. They can't get into that front place. They can't rule over you. Keep Jesus at the foundation. Number two, just believe this. Any other foundation will ultimately persecute you, even if your foundation is your kids. Because then fear of loss of your kids, which all of us will feel, but that will control you. You won't be a good parent. And that will hunt you. That will persecute you. It will drive your inner life. War, economic distresses, plagues, famines, horsemen of the apocalypse. These are all antichrist. We can't let them displace Christ in the meditations of our hearts. And if we don't, if we keep Christ at the center, then we can rejoice. Anything less than this foundation of Christ is a false foundation, and we must hate that falseness. That's number two. Keep Christ as the foundation. Number two, hate it when you get pulled into any other foundation. But then number three, just admit that you do. You get pulled to other foundations. So 7 times a day, keep returning. Return to this place of praise. Recenter on Christ. When you do that, you have great peace. And all these other things don't have the ability to hijack your heart and drive your narrative. Don't let that happen. Turn off the media. Stop listening to the numbers. They are, unless you're in a really, really good emotional place, emotionally misleading. And they'll drive your narrative. So keep returning to Christ. And number 4, keep hope. You keep hope in that place of great peace by guarding the testimony. Be a good witness. This idea of witness here is a solemn charge that God has given us. God is telling us to represent, even if it kills us. Be a witness. We overcome the devil by the blood of the Lamb, by the word of our testimony, and not to love our own lives so much as to shrink from death. We keep hope by keeping the testimony. And our soul keeps hope by guarding God's precepts. This idea is the command you received, the mission. Stay on mission. You are commissioned as a sentry. You are commissioned So you keep hope by staying on mission, by keeping your testimony. All those things are outflowings of great peace, great shalom that come from loving God's law. Don't let false princes steal that from you. It's Palm Sunday. Celebrate the triumphal entry of the true Prince and experience some of that shalom. I pray that you will. I am confident that you will. And I hope you enjoy this Palm Sunday. Have a blessed day. He is the King. Celebrate him.